They called me proud. While I was folding grocery cards with hands that once raised their children, hands that buried a husband and held babies who now have babies of their own. They said I thought I was better than everyone else, because I never walked up to the altar when they called for those in need. They saw me sitting there with my back straight and my lips quiet, and they mistook that for pride. But what they didn't see was the envelope I slipped under Sister Marilyn's pew 2 Sundays ago. Or the card I tucked into the back of the choir room for the Johnson girl after hearing her mother was behind on rent. They didn't see the check I sent to the church office, marked anonymous, covering 3 families from that prayer list. I wasn't too proud to accept help. I was just too busy being someone else's miracle. Thank you for being here. Truly. If you've ever helped without clapping, if you've ever given quietly while folks around you made noise, then this story, it's for you. Maybe you've stood in a room full of people and still felt like no one saw what you carried. Maybe you've slipped $5 into someone's hand and walked away before they could even say thank you. I know that kind of heart. It's the kind that doesn't ask for applause, just peace. Where are you listening from tonight? What's your story? Because I know I'm not the only one who's ever been misunderstood for staying quiet. I'm not the only one who's been called proud just for carrying grace in silence. If you've ever sat through a storm with a straight back and a soft heart, I'd love to hear from you. Some stories don't fit the pulpit, some stories don't wear choir robes, but they still deserve to be told. And I'm listening. My name is Loretta Mae Daniels. I'm 78 years old, and I've been a member of New Bethel Baptist Church for over 40 years. I sat on the 3rd pew from the back when I first joined. Didn't know nobody, didn't need to. I came to worship, and I stayed because I found family. Over the years, I became the woman folks could count on. Not the one with the loudest voice, but the one who always showed up early, with peppermints in her purse and a gentle nod at the door. I served on the usher board for 22 years, wore my white gloves proudly. I helped plan church anniversaries, organized baby showers in the basement, and made sure the shut-ins got a plate on Sundays. I folded bulletins, cleaned the communion trays, and when they needed extra hands for the women's retreat, I was already halfway packed. I've sold pies to fix the youth van, and I've scrubbed that fellowship hall floor till my knees went numb. When my husband James passed, I didn't take time off. I just showed up the next Sunday with a heavier heart and the same offering envelope in my purse. That's how I survived the grief. By giving, by pouring into others when I felt empty myself. Nobody had to ask me. I just knew what needed to be done. And I did it, quietly. I never wanted to be the prayer request. I just wanted to be the answer to one. There's a kind of peace that comes from giving without being seen. But that kind of peace, it comes at a cost. Because in a church full of noise, the quiet ones get misunderstood. They don't see your hands moving. They don't hear your footsteps in the background. They just notice your silence and give it a name that doesn't belong to you. It started with a whisper. Just one. I was pouring lemonade into paper cups after service like I'd done 100 times before when I heard it. Real soft, just above a hush, but loud enough for my heart to catch it. She never takes the food box, always acting too proud. It was the kind of comment that sounds small on the surface, but cuts deep if you've been misunderstood long enough. I didn't turn around, didn't ask who said it. I just smiled at the next person in line and kept pouring. But once a whisper like that finds its way into a room, it don't stay small. It spreads. It grows legs. Before long, folks started looking at me with something different in their eyes. Not kindness. Not confusion. Something else. Like I was trying to set myself apart. Like I thought I was better than struggle, better than need. The truth is, I knew what it felt like to be hungry. I knew what it felt like to open the fridge and count the same 3 things over and over, hoping they'd add up to a meal. That's why I gave. That's why I looked for the quiet needs in others, the ones they were too embarrassed to speak out loud. Every Sunday morning, I'd bring 3 envelopes in my Bible. I'd write no name on them. Just slide one under a pew where I knew Sister Gwen sat. She'd been raising her grandson since his mama disappeared, and I'd heard her whisper to the Lord one night during altar call, begging for help with the rent. She didn't know I was behind her, but I heard every word. Another envelope I'd leave near the sound booth, right under the edge of the chair where that young usher boy's daddy always sat. His hours got cut last winter, and I saw him wear the same boots till the toes leaned sideways. I never said a word. I just paid his utility bill and kept smiling when he held the door for me. Sometimes I'd hand the mailman a grocery card and say, "Drop this at number 14 with the rest of the mail." No return address. No note. Just a little grace tucked in between bills and coupons. And I did it not because I had much, but because I knew what little can do when it shows up right on time. But see, in this world, if you don't make noise about what you're doing, folks start writing stories with your silence. They start calling you things you never claimed. All because you chose to serve in the shadows. I wasn't too proud. I was just raised not to put good deeds on loudspeakers. Every Sunday, that bulletin would be warm in my hands, fresh off the copier, folded neat with the week's scripture and announcements. And right there in the middle, always right there, was the prayer list. Names stacked one after the other. Some I knew, some I didn't. But I read every single one. Slowly, carefully, like each name was being whispered to God through my lips. There was Sister Denise, a mother of twins. Her name had been on that list for 6 straight weeks. First it said health, then employment, then housing instability. I didn't need all the details. I just remembered the look in her eyes when she tried to smile during coffee hour. That forced kind of smile women wear when they're trying to look okay for their babies. I saw myself in her. The same quiet desperation I used to carry when James passed, and I had to figure out how to stretch one income into 2 lives. Then there was Miss Irene, a grandmother who lived on the east side in a house with more love than insulation. Her name came up every winter. "Pray for warmth," the bulletin said one week. That kind of line breaks you. Not just physically, but right in your spirit. Because you realize someone among us is sitting in a cold house, wrapped in blankets, while we're under the comfort of pew cushions and padded choir seats. I remembered what it felt like the year our heat went out, and we had to sleep in the kitchen with the oven door cracked open. I remembered because pain has a way of making you generous if you let it. Then there was Brother Calvin. His name wasn't on the list for long, just 2 weeks, but that was enough. The note said, "Urgent financial need. Prayers appreciated." I knew what that meant. It meant someone was behind on rent. It meant someone's lights were about to be shut off. And so, I called the number I found in the back of the bulletin, pretending to ask about something else. Asked for a landlord's office. Asked if there was a balance under a certain unit. The woman on the phone paused, said yes, and gave me the total. I paid it. Hung up. Prayed. That was it. No one ever knew, and I never needed them to. See, I didn't judge those names. I didn't ask how they got there, or what choices led to their need. I just remembered my own lean days. Days when a $5 bill felt like a miracle. When someone's unexpected kindness stretched longer than a paycheck ever could. And so I paid it forward, not out of plenty, but out of understanding. I paid their rent with the same money I was saving for my roof repair. I gave away what I had planned to use for my own house, the one with the leaking corner in the back room. But God never let it leak. Not once. Rain came, storms passed, and that ceiling held strong. Because I believe when you cover someone else's shelter, heaven finds a way to cover yours. I never said a word to anyone, just circled the names on the bulletin, folded it, and put it in my Bible. That list haunted me. Not in a way that scared me, in a way that reminded me that the church isn't just a building, it's a body. And sometimes, the body aches, and when one part hurts, the rest is supposed to respond. Not with judgment, not with noise, but with quiet acts of love that speak louder than sermons. It was the first Sunday of the month, and that meant communion. Folks came in dressed a little sharper, with hats taller than usual, and shoes shined like they were stepping into heaven itself. The choir wore their white robes with gold trim, and the ushers had gloves so crisp, you'd think they'd been ironed with prayer. People greeted each other in the hallway like they hadn't just seen one another on Wednesday night. Hugs were longer, smiles wider. But I wasn't looking at any of that. I was watching the front of the church, and what caught my eye was not the pulpit, but the altar. She came in late, head down, shoulders slumped, her little boy clutching her side like he'd learned early how to be strong for her. I knew her face. I knew her walk. And I knew her pain. Because the Sunday before, I'd seen her name again on that prayer list, tucked right under urgent request. It didn't say much, just that she was in danger of losing her home and that prayers were needed. But I didn't just pray. I picked up the phone the next morning, called a number I'd used before, asked a few quiet questions. Spoke softly, carefully. No one needed to know it was me. I paid what was owed, thanked the woman on the other end, and hung up. No receipt, no record. Just peace. That was enough for me. And now here she was, walking slowly down the aisle with that look I know too well. The look of someone who has nothing left to hold but their dignity. And even that was slipping. She reached the front and lowered herself to her knees. That little boy didn't make a sound. He just stood by her, like he understood something holy was happening. Then she began to cry. And Lord, it wasn't a quiet cry. It wasn't the kind you can hide behind a napkin or a soft cough. This was the kind of cry that doesn't ask for permission. The kind that escapes you, even when you've begged it not to. Her back heaved with every sob. Her hands covered her face, but her pain filled that sanctuary like incense. The choir was singing, the pastor was prepping the bread and the cup, but in my pew all I could hear was her breaking. And I felt every bit of it. I didn't move, didn't walk up to touch her shoulder. I just sat, hands clasped tight, eyes fixed. Because I knew that cry. Not from movies, not from stories, from life, from my own mirror. I remembered the day after James was buried, when the silence in our house felt heavier than the casket we'd just lowered into the ground. I remembered standing in our kitchen, holding his chipped coffee mug, and dropping to my knees because the ache in my chest was louder than my breath. I remembered when the foreclosure letter came, years ago. I sat on the front steps of our house, holding it in both hands like it might burst into flames if I let go. We'd worked so hard for that place. We painted every wall together, prayed in that living room when money was tight, grew tomatoes in the backyard, and danced slow in the hallway when nobody was watching. And then just like that, it was gone. And I cried just like she did, with everything I had left. So I stayed seated. Let her cry. Let her have her moment without interruption. Sometimes, the most respectful thing you can do is let someone fall apart without trying to tape them back together too soon. I prayed quietly, asked God to give her the strength she didn't even know she needed yet. Asked him to remind her that she wasn't alone, even if she felt like it. And as I watched her shoulders start to slow, her breathing begin to steady, I felt something shift in me too. She didn't know me. Didn't know I was the one who made that phone call. Didn't know that her rent had been paid because someone in the back pew decided her tears mattered more than their home repair budget. And she didn't need to know. That moment wasn't about recognition. It was about reassurance. It was about her being able to kneel at that altar and not feel like the world was crashing down around her. And me? Well, I sat there and felt more seen than I had in a long time. Because watching her rise, with just a little more strength than she had when she knelt, reminded me that grace works best when it doesn't ask for credit. She stood up slowly, wiped her face with the edge of her sleeve, took her little boy's hand and walked back to her seat. Her steps were still slow, but there was something in them. Something lighter. Maybe she didn't know where her next blessing would come from, but at least for now, the weight was lifted. And I sat back in that pew, heart full, hands warm, tears just barely held back. Because I realized in that moment, I didn't need a stage to feel useful. I didn't need applause to feel fulfilled. I just needed to know that somewhere, in the quiet corners of someone else's storm, I had been a small umbrella. A whisper of shelter. A reminder that good still exists. That Sunday, I didn't sing. I didn't shout. I didn't lift my hands. I just sat there, still. Knowing that sometimes, the loudest love is the kind that makes no sound at all. It was the Wednesday after that communion service, choir rehearsal night. The building was quieter than Sunday, but the walls still echoed with the usual sounds. Piano chords being tested, altos warming up too early, someone laughing too loud in the hallway. I always helped set out the water bottles and straighten the folding chairs before rehearsal. Nobody ever asked me to, but I believed in making the space ready for the Spirit. That was enough for me. I was in the back of the fellowship hall, folding the last of the tablecloths we used for the youth dinner. I wasn't trying to listen. Truly, I wasn't. But some conversations have a way of finding your ears even when you're trying to mind your business. They were in the choir room, just past the door left halfway open. A group of women, sharp dresses, polished voices, and lips that moved quicker than their prayers ever did. One said, "She act like she above it all. You ever seen her ask for anything?" Another replied, "Even Jesus wept, but she too proud to shed a tear." Then someone laughed, not loud, just that soft, knowing kind of laugh, the kind that makes you feel smaller even if you're not in the room. I stood still, tablecloth in hand, listening to words that weren't meant for me but aimed so well, they might as well have been stitched into the hem of my dress. And what hurt most wasn't the gossip itself. It was how confidently they said it. Like my silence gave them permission to assign meaning to my life. Like my absence from altar calls, my choice to sit in the back, my quiet giving, all that meant I thought I was better, that I didn't need God's help, that I was somehow different. But they were wrong. I never wanted to be the sermon. I just wanted to keep folks from drowning. That's all. I didn't need a title or a microphone or a seat at the front of the church. I didn't need to be called out in a meeting or have my name written in a program. I just needed to give, to show up, to fill the gap where others fell short. Because I knew what drowning felt like. I knew the taste of quiet desperation. I knew how hard it was to smile when your stomach was empty, how to raise your hands in worship while your lights were off at home. And I promised myself, years ago, that if I ever had even a little extra, I'd make sure somebody else could breathe. But somehow, quiet kindness unsettles people. Somehow doing good without asking for credit makes folks suspicious. And instead of asking me why I sat in the back, why I never raised my hand for help, they just assumed I didn't think I needed it. They never considered that I had already cried my tears, that I had already gone through the fire, that I had come out on the other side, not untouched but refined, that my silence wasn't pride, it was purpose. Because grace doesn't come with a microphone. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand the spotlight. It slips in through the side door, mends what's torn, and leaves before anyone even notices. And me? I didn't need to be noticed. I just wanted the giving to outlive the gossip. I wanted the quiet blessings to speak louder than the loud voices. And so I kept folding tablecloths, kept slipping envelopes, kept praying for people who whispered my name like it was a problem, not knowing that same name had been listed on checks that saved them from eviction. I walked out of that fellowship hall with my head high, not because I was proud, but because I knew my why. And when you know your why, the noise around you doesn't hold as much power. Let them talk. Let them sing. Let them make jokes in corners and behind doors. I wasn't there for their approval. I was there for something deeper, something eternal. Because when your hands are busy healing, you don't have time to defend your silence. It was a few days after that choir room whisper found its way to my ears. I didn't say nothing about it, didn't bring it up to no one. I just let it sit with me, like a pebble in your shoe that you don't bother to shake loose because you've gotten used to the sting. But not everything goes unnoticed. And that Sunday after service, as the last of the crowd poured out into the parking lot, I saw her walking toward me. The pastor's wife. First lady, as they call her. Always dressed just right, always smiling, always gracious. She had a gentle way about her, the kind of woman who could ask you a hard question and make it feel like a hug. I loved her spirit, even if we didn't speak much beyond Sunday greetings and occasional potluck planning. She said, "Sister Loretta, can I steal you for a few minutes? I've got a fresh pot of coffee in my office." I said sure, followed her down that narrow hallway beside the pulpit, past the bulletin board with baby dedications and bake sale flyers. Her office smelled like lavender and lemon polish, and the window let in the kind of sunlight that made the dust dance. She poured 2 cups, handed me one, and sat across from me like she'd been waiting all week for that moment. She looked at me kind, but her eyes were searching. She said, "I just wanted to talk, woman to woman. I've noticed you never come up for altar call. I know you've been through a lot. Losing Brother James, managing the house alone, helping everyone else, and yet you never stepped forward, never let us lift you." I didn't answer right away. I just stirred my coffee slow, though I hadn't added anything to it. She continued, soft and sweet. It's okay to receive sometimes too. You know that, right? And I smiled. The kind of smile that carries years. The kind you wear when you've buried loved ones, packed up memories in cardboard boxes, and learned how to keep going even when your knees begged you not to. I looked her in the eyes and said, sometimes I do receive. Just not in front of the choir. She blinked, tilted her head just slightly. I could tell the meaning hadn't landed yet, so I sipped my coffee and let the silence speak. Because what I meant was this: just because I don't walk to the altar doesn't mean I don't kneel in my kitchen. Just because I don't cry in public doesn't mean I don't weep in the dark. And just because I don't raise my hand when they ask who needs prayer doesn't mean my name hasn't been whispered to God through clenched teeth and trembling lips. I receive peace when I help someone pay their rent. I receive joy when I hear a mother laugh again after the burden's been lifted. I receive healing every time I make room for someone else to breathe, even when I'm breathless myself. No, I don't go up during altar call, but I've got altars in every room of my house. She sat quiet for a long while, nodded eventually, but didn't say much. I didn't expect her to. Not everyone understands the language of the quiet. Some folks only believe in blessings when they're loud, when they come with a laying on of hands and a tambourine in the background. But me, I know that God moves in the hush, just as much as the shout. I finished my coffee, thanked her for the warmth, and walked out of that office with the same calm I walked in with. She meant well. I knew that. And maybe one day she'd understand. That not every hand raised is asking for help. Some are still holding others up, and not every bowed head is broken. Some are just grateful, some are just tired, some are both. But all are seen. Even the ones in the back pew, with nothing but a prayer list in their lap and a miracle tucked in their purse. The thing about giving quietly is you never expect it to echo back. I'd done things the same way for years. No names, no credit, just silent blessings passed through careful hands. But that Sunday, something shifted. I was gathering programs after second service when a man approached me. He looked polite, nervous almost, holding his hat like it was a gift. He said, "You're Sister Loretta, right? I just wanted to thank you. The Carsons, my tenants, said someone paid their rent last month. I asked around, and your name came up." I smiled, nodded softly and said, "Glad they're all right." I meant to leave it there, but someone behind us heard. I didn't see who, but within minutes I could feel it spreading. Little sparks of conversation lighting up across the room. "She's the one who paid for the Carsons. I heard she helped Sister Denise too. Wait, she's been doing this for how long?" By the time I reached the front doors, it was quiet. Not peaceful quiet, just still. Like the room didn't know what to do with the truth. The same folks who once said I was too proud now didn't say anything at all. And I didn't need them to. Their silence said enough. It was the last Sunday of the month, Testimony Sunday. The kind of service where folks line up just to tell what the Lord had done, even if they had to hold back tears or read from a wrinkled napkin. I sat in my usual seat, quiet, hands folded in my lap, listening as stories poured out like rain. One sister shared how someone had paid her light bill. Another said her rent was suddenly caught up after months of falling behind. They all thanked God, tears in their eyes, voices shaking, but none of them knew who to thank beyond that. They just kept saying, "An angel helped me." Then the pastor stood up, smiled gently, held the mic like he was weighing something heavy. He said, "Church, today we've heard testimonies about unexpected blessings, anonymous angels and miracles that showed up just in time." He paused, looked around the sanctuary. "And sometimes," he said, "those angels have names." He looked right at me. "Sister Loretta, we know now, you didn't want applause, but we see you." That's when the room went still. No amens, no hand claps, just silence. Deep, full, heavy silence. It was the loudest silence I ever heard, and the kindest. No one stood up. No one shouted, but every eye in that sanctuary turned toward me. Not with pity, not with confusion, but with something softer. Something that finally felt like understanding. And I just sat there, not proud, not embarrassed, just peaceful. Because I hadn't done any of it to be seen. But being seen, truly seen, for the right reasons, that's a different kind of blessing. After that Sunday, everything felt quieter, even when it was loud. Folks greeted me with warmer smiles. Some hugged me longer than usual. A few slipped notes in my purse or left flowers by my seat. Nobody said much about it, but I knew they knew. And I knew they didn't know everything. See, years ago when the whispers first started, before the thank yous and the testimonies, I sat at my kitchen table one night with a pen in my hand and a heart too full to sleep. I didn't plan to send it. I just needed to say it. For me, for my peace, for the version of me that cried quietly after church. I never did mail it, never printed it out. But I remember every word. To the ones who called me proud, I forgive you. To the ones who watched me walk into church every week and assumed silence meant arrogance, it was actually sacrifice. You didn't know how many bills I carried that didn't have my name on them. You didn't see the grocery lists I paid for or the rent notices I intercepted. You didn't know that I was already giving everything I had. Not for attention, not for praise, but because I remembered what it felt like to need and not know how to ask. I stayed quiet because I had to be strong for people who didn't know I was holding them up. I stayed quiet because some blessings only bloom in the shadows. I stayed quiet because God was louder in my stillness than people were in their noise. I paused when I wrote that part, sat back, let the tears come, not out of pain, but out of release. Then I finished it. If you ever assumed I thought I was better, you never really looked close enough. I wasn't better. I was just busy pouring from a well I didn't advertise. And if you ever find yourself judged for loving in silence, keep loving anyway. When you help in secret, expect to be misunderstood. But do it anyway. Because not every seed shows its roots. Some just grow, quietly, and hold the world together from underneath. I folded the letter and tucked it inside my Bible. It's still there. Yellowed edges, ink faded, but it holds the part of me I never got to say out loud until now. And maybe someone watching this needed to hear it too. Maybe you've been loving in silence, giving when no one sees, carrying people who may never say thank you. If that's you, keep going. Your quiet doesn't make your grace smaller. It makes it deeper. I wrote that letter during a thunderstorm. I remember it clear. The rain was tapping soft against the windows, the kind of tapping that sounds like someone gently asking to be let in. The house was still. No television, no radio. Just me, a warm cup of tea, and a notebook I hadn't touched in months. I lit a candle, not because the lights were out, but because I needed to see things differently. And I started writing. To the ones who called me proud, I forgive you. Those were the first words that came to me. Not out of anger, not out of bitterness, just truth. I had carried those whispers long enough, let them echo in my chest while I handed out kindness behind closed doors. I didn't want to hold on to them anymore. To the ones who assumed silence meant arrogance, it was actually sacrifice. You see, I wasn't quiet because I had nothing to say. I was quiet because I had too much to carry. Too many names on the prayer list, too many grocery cards tucked into hymn books, too many mothers crying at night not knowing I had already made the call that would buy them one more month under their roof. I didn't speak because I was too busy listening. Listening for who needed what. Listening for the Holy Spirit's whisper. Listening for the cracks where grace might fit through. That letter held more than just words. It held every dollar I gave without a name, every meal I packed without a photo, every need I met without expecting a thank you. I kept writing. I didn't walk up to the altar, not because I didn't need prayer, but because I was already praying in the back pew for somebody else. And sometimes, when your hands are full of other people's burdens, you forget how to lift your own. I paused, hands shaking just a little, remembering all the times I cried behind the sanctuary, never letting a single tear fall in front of the congregation. That kind of crying changes you. It teaches you how to break quietly. But I finished the letter that night. And if you ever find yourself misunderstood, if they ever twist your stillness into pride, let them. You don't owe noise to people who never asked about your silence. When you help in secret, expect to be misunderstood. But do it anyway. Because some blessings come wrapped in quiet. And the loudest kind of love is the kind that doesn't announce itself. I closed the notebook and slid it onto the shelf. Never mailed it. Never showed it to anyone. It was just for me. A place to set the weight down. A soft goodbye to the part of me that still felt the sting of being judged by people who never saw the full picture. And now, all these years later, I still give, still serve, still love quietly. Because grace doesn't need to explain itself, it just keeps showing up. Whether they understand it or not. The porch is quiet tonight, just the wind moving through the trees and the soft creak of this old rocking chair beneath me. I've sat here so many evenings like this, hands folded, heart full, thinking back on a life that was never loud, but always full of love. You know, not every story gets told the way it deserves. Some of us spend years doing the right thing in the dark, while folks stand in the light making noise. And somehow we get called names for that. Proud, distant, unbothered. But they never asked what we were carrying. So let me ask you, have you ever been mistaken for proud when all you were trying to do was stay afloat while keeping others from drowning? Have you ever helped in secret and then turned around and found yourself being judged in public? Have you ever sat in the back quietly giving everything you had, only to be looked at like you thought you were better, when really you were just tired? Just holding on? Just doing your best to be someone's answer without asking for anything in return? I know that feeling. I've lived that feeling. They whispered about pride, but grace was the only thing I was carrying. And if that's been your walk, if you've ever had to choose peace over proving yourself, if you've ever folded a blessing into someone's life without needing a spotlight or a platform, then I want you to know something. Your story matters. Tell your story below. I'm listening. And if you want more stories like this, where the quiet ones finally speak, where the back pews are honored, and the misunderstood hearts get their turn to be heard, then stay with us. Subscribe to Granny Stories, and stay tuned for more stories because this porch light stays on for those who gave in silence and were still talked about. You're not alone out there. And I see you. Thank you for watching More Love from Granny.